Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, January 20th. I'm starting particularly late today. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the US presidential inauguration. It has everything to do with the fact that I literally went to sleep around 7 or 8 in the morning because of insomnia, and then an hour later, my doorbell rang, waking me up, and that set off a trigger of me sleeping for a couple hours and then waking up, then rolling over and going back to sleep. Generally, for the past couple of weeks, I have been sleeping, it feels like, very poor quality sleep between 12 and 16 hours a day. It's not great. It's certainly not an efficient way to live a life, certainly. Um, but yeah, I do. We can thankfully mostly keep politics out of the video game stream today. There's not really anything that represents a big major news announcement. Although I do think I vaguely recall that Biden at some point may have proposed some legislation at some point against video games, which almost certainly would apply to almost any politicians. And the vice president doesn't seem to be uh, likely to have any policies that would be particularly pro video games either. But I don't know how much a vice president is really going to make policy, so I'm not sure how much even a president makes policy. Um, so that solves uh, that issue. Um, let's see. So we can move on to the accountability section. I've been playing The Walking Dead. It's very limited amount of playing of it, honestly. There's definitely... See, I did not qualify for the final stage, which is fine. I figured that would be the case. The Walking Dead is an incredibly slow story. It's just not grabbing me particularly well. It doesn't feel like it is going to be a all-out interesting wrap up of 4 seasons. I am now at the point where Skybound Games came in and finished the final season, so I'm in episode 3 of 4. And the only major difference I've noticed so far is that it feels like the writing might be slightly better, and it feels like, and they've changed like the color uh of the subtitle font, and that's about it. Like that's as far as I've gotten. Um, Honestly, there's just not a lot to say there. It's like we're just setting up for a big battle that was different from the big battle that I probably talked about in the last recording, because that big battle happened and it didn't really resolve much. And at some point, I turned Clementine into a lesbian so she could sleep her way to the top of the power chain in this troubled school for youth. We're starting to see a few more instances of these kids that were in this school being troubled. Although, frankly, they're not as troubled as I would like, as I would expect. Like one of them seems to have made bombs, and one of them, it just occurred to me, has this big old scar on his face. Tennessee, or Tin. I guess we need to play as Dragoncraft first and foremost. And he has this big old scar on his face, and I kept on thinking, oh yeah, that had to happen after the zombie apocalypse happened. But come to think of it, it is very possible that that he was abused as a kid, and that led to behavior problems and trauma. And Marlon certainly was cowardly and selfish, but he was already shot. So, but then there definitely are other people that don't really seem like they deserve to be there, because
Silence. The dead have no
I would
words.
expect them to be more just stark raving mad psychopaths, people that are really, really just incapable of being a normal human being, and they're definitely not written that way to kids. If anything, it's going to turn into a situation where they're just more moldable, and thus they are more easily going to accommodate survival in a zombie apocalypse. It is slowly, just by my decisions, eliminating almost all the adult males in the group. So if there is any number of people that survive at the end of the story, it may create kind of a matriarchy thing, which that was certainly a thought I had, is that in a zombie apocalypse, particularly as the way the Walking Dead games show it, there's never large groups of people, so you would just have incredible inbreeding if you could even survive long enough to try and repopulate the planet, to the point where it might be beneficial to like outlaw heterosexual marriages and couplings of that kind, because you would just need so many men and women to sleep with so much of a variety of men and women, to keep the gene pool at least somewhat varied. But yeah, I guess you don't have to. I guess the idea there would be to outlaw monogamy more than heterosexual coupling, because there's no problem with having a male and female pair together, as long as the male and female are also sleeping around with other people for the purposes of procreation. And certainly there's a lot of emotions tied to those ideas that would create other elements of conflict. But yeah, because almost all of the remaining people, adults in the group, are female, probably won't change much. I don't think anything's going to change much. It seemed fairly obvious even from the beginning of the first season that what's going to happen is it's going to just copy kind of the ending of the first season, where Clementine's going to die and leave AJ to be the new character that's followed. And I don't think Skybound Games is well suited to make more Telltale style games. I think you can have AJ or Clementine, if she survives, show up in future games, but I think you go I think what you go and do is you instead create something closer to Fallout, or Skyrim, something that has more grindiness to it. We have games like Dying Light and such. But yeah, I think you do something like that, and then you have more of a gameplay loop occur. The thing about the Walking Dead Telltale games is that they started by selling themselves on good story, and then they immediately ran out of budget by the end of the first season to really have good story. And I would argue, of the 5 episodes in the first season of The Walking Dead, there's probably at most 3 episodes that are great, and maybe 1 that's good and 1 that's mediocre. Whereas if you had given all the writing for the entire first season to one person, one good writer, I imagine you would have had been able to make the argument at least that the entire game is decently written. But you can't really do that in this case because they loudly announced that they had hired different writers. Which, kind of in fairness, I suspect that there is a case where other games have had like shadow writers writing parts of the story, but they usually, I imagine, don't have it completely separated out, where it's fairly obvious in the Telltale games that they had a beginning and an end of each episode scripted, as an overall producer had that general concept, and then they let the writers do whatever they wanted in the middle. And we can certainly see that with the character James being introduced in the second episode for basically 2 conversations, and now he's coming back and being more useful in the third episode. I think it also probably is a case where James is supposed to be an allegory for how this group is going to have to learn to accept new people and grow. There are definitely a lot of allegories in the final season. Kids are being kidnapped and being turned into war children. It's pretty obvious there. There obviously is an allegory of abuse that they have yet to really talk about. There's allegories of trauma. There's allegories of lots of things, but no real decent messages on any of these things. I don't want the Walking Dead game to get super preachy, but it needs to have a story to tell, and it doesn't really feel like it does. If anything, it just feels like it's a bad visual novel, which, even though Telltale games have the things you would love to see in most visual novels, in that it is fairly nicely animated and it's fully voice acted, I think you would have a significant collection of visual novels out there that are way better written. Well, is there anything else to talk about? Well, I found out my Watchdog script on my router that was supposed to reboot my router whenever the internet was out has not been working for ever, probably since I last edited it, which that was dumb. I don't know how that happened. Almost certainly what happened is I had it working for a second, and then I was half asleep, and then I made some slight change to make the code look a little bit nicer. Yeah, it definitely was a case like that, and when I changed the code to make it look nicer, I failed to test it again. And at a certain point, that is the danger of trying to visually improve something, or visually improve code that doesn't really need to be improved. But yeah, when you're sleeping 16 hours a day, or when it feels like you're sleeping 16 hours a day, it's real easy not to get anything accomplished. I also have the Lego set I started like 2 days ago that I need to finish up. I've been trying to figure out whether I could use, I need to look still if I can find like a wedding table or I'm looking for like a really big flat surface to put my giant Lego collection on and display it. Like I have a table, but it's not quite what I like. It's not wide enough and not long enough. And frankly, it's not really that sturdy. And so I'm trying to think of that. I'm also trying to think of storage and shipping that will eventually become an issue. At least.
These weapons are for hunting dragons.
Cutting across.
Yeah. Yeah, if I definitely don't have anything else to say, so we should just cover the video game news. Also, I can see I just paused quite a bit there and got lost in thought, so that, like, that's just another indicator that I'm not that awake and I won't be that awake. As far as the audio, I did ask people to comment if they thought the audio sounded different. I listened to it. It sounds fine to me. If somebody wants to disagree on that, let me know in the comments, either during the live stream or later.
It won't be long now.
Someone commented on one of my videos that probably does have a decent number of views, saying, am I the first one to see this? And I just flippantly immediately responded, yeah, knowing the YouTube algorithm, you might be. But honestly, in that instance, they were commenting on the code Minecraft playthrough I did many years ago, and I'm fairly certain I've seen all of that. I think even the creator of the code had seen most of those videos, or at least pretended like he did by liking the videos, so
You're a solid fighter.
I might be confusing the creator of Captive Minecraft with the code. Or was the code 2, whatever. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, there is probably an argument that I have not enough comments versus views, and most of the time people don't really care about that, or I don't think the YouTube algorithm particularly cares about that, but it would be nice for my own ego, if nothing else, to have more comments. YouTube Studios, the YouTube Studio app for Android, is not very helpful when you get a comment about telling you what video the comment is on. You just get this comment and you have to generally guess what they're talking about, or go through several more screens to figure it out. They've also, in the background, they've merged held for review and probable spam categories under comments, and now they're going to just, after 30 days, completely delete any comment that's not been addressed, which that definitely means there's going to be there's going to be less responses on YouTube comments than now. It definitely feels like YouTube is just out of money. Like they are drastically trying to save hard drive space all over the place, and it is like pathetically pathetically penny pinching to care about what would have been just maybe a few kilobytes in space as far as comments go. But I guess a lot of that might depend heavily on whether the comments are in databases or the comments are in text files, and how expensive is it overall to run those databases.
A fitting end.
Like, you could certainly have a problem if you had a whole bunch of little files. depending on your, I believe it's called cluster size of your file format. Having a lot of little files can take up a lot more space than having a bunch of big files or medium files. But also depending on your file format, I think there's probably ways to mitigate that. Let's see, rush, 6 damage. Just go and kill that. Interesting, Telltale Games just tweeted out or retweeted something, which is a meme that's growing of Bernie Sanders sitting watching board at the inauguration, and they put him in, well, I'll just show it. They put him in the Wolf Among Us image. It's strange because we know there is a company that bought Telltale Games, but they've been fairly quiet. They don't really have anything to announce at the moment. I think they're working on the Wolf Among Us too, but that's probably going to be slow. It would be weird for Telltale Games to change the gameplay style for the Wolf Among Us 2, but they need to do a thing that is blatantly obvious playing the old Telltale games, is they need to have some smaller side games that are either standard flat 2D point-and-click adventures or just straight up visual novels, and maybe publish visual novels under that branding for other people. That they need some secondary form of game to sell, because having all of their employees do the same thing over and over again really did not work. People got bored. Surprisingly, the Telltale employees, and I really don't want to put too much blame on this, on the employees, but the employees, seemingly based on their code for their last game, seem to be so overworked throughout their entire careers at Telltale that they never were allowed to experiment or learn or get any better, because, man, the final season of The Walking Dead runs no better than the first season of The Walking Dead. So you're talking about a decade of just churning out the same thing over and over again. And that's really not good for anybody. Yeah, and so I would definitely want to see the new Telltale try different kinds of games, and once in a while, I guess, maybe do something that is reminiscent of the Telltale games. I think you can easily take Tales from the Borderlands out of that style of game and just integrate those characters into Borderlands games, even if you were going to make a spin-off DLC or side Borderlands game with those characters. That would be fine. Still struggling to get one stupid Dragoncraft victory, and maybe if I was more awake I could think of improving these decks, but I'm not, so I won't. But the Walking Dead games, I think Skybound bought them out of the bankruptcy, and I think it would make a lot of sense to take characters like Lee and Clementine and AJ out of the Telltale style of games and put them as either skins or actual characters. I mean, it wouldn't really have hurt to make like an alternate reality where Lee survived, which I guess you could do that with the split nature of how the stories go. Like, So I could imagine doing something like that and bringing those characters into a standard first-person shooter type zombie game. Or it's kind of crazy that they haven't tried to make a battle royale game. Like, I think you would potentially catch some people's interest if you could squeeze out a game before the Left 4 Dead spiritual successor Back 4 Blood comes out. If you could have gotten a battle royale before that game came out and was announced, that would have been great. Maybe it's too late for Skybound Games to do that, and maybe Skybound Games just doesn't have enough skilled programmers to do that. So then the next step would be, hey, let's just license Lee and Clementine and AJ to be characters in Back 4 Blood, or integrate them into the same universe. Skybound Games, I think, probably do very well to just license the Walking Dead characters, either from the TV series or the Telltale game, and put them in something like Back 4 Blood or Dying Light. Where Telltale Games, they probably would have to renegotiate for any Batman games. So I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they're going to renegotiate for any of the newer or older games. Like, you're not going to get probably a new Sam and Max. You're probably not going to get a new Jurassic Park. You're probably not going to get a Wallace and Gromit, which were some of their much earlier games before they released The Walking Dead. So they've only really got The Wolf Among Us at best, and that's a license too. I wouldn't be upset if Telltale just literally tried to make another Poker Night at the Inventory to improve that. There's probably a decent number of characters. But Poker Night at the Inventory is another example also of a game that blew its budget not on gameplay mechanics, but instead on paying voice actors and animators to sell a fairly generic poker game. Anyways, let's move on with video game news. Kimetsu has the Grisaia Phantom Trigger 1-5 collection for Switch, launching April 28th in Japan. Here we can see this is some form of visual novel game. I wasn't 100% sure on that. Like, I wouldn't immediately have assumed that. I kind of thought it might be a shoot 'em up game or something. Yeah, I've got an age verification on Nintendo. I didn't realize Nintendo even did that. Let's see. 0101 1900. There we go, that worked. Let's see what we want to play here. Let's just play that. That's probably as best as we can go. 2 damage to an enemy follower. That won't do anything. So here we have Grisaia Phantom Trigger 0102 on the Switch store. And yeah, it's a bunch of anime girls with guns in a visual novel setting. Honestly, this is kind of the exact same story that The Walking Dead final season is telling. It's a bunch of kids in a school seemingly fighting against something. Might as well be zombies. And that certainly is a part where, had it not been a school for troubled youth, had it been a military school, which is also often a school for troubled youth in the final season of The Walking Dead, then all of the kids would probably have had access to actual guns instead of being incredible wimps. Like, they certainly were in no way prepared to survive. And at the core of it, that is The Walking Dead's whole stick, is the fact that you are basically playing a child raising simulator that is slightly different from like Princess Maker, but not that different. And that child raising simulator is about teaching people that you control or people around you how to survive. And it is definitely a coin flip. Certainly if you like the comic booky, very unique art style of Telltale games compared to the anime style, which is very generic in a game like this. Honestly, though, I would say that there's, from the first season to the last season of The Walking Dead, the art style has changed a little bit, and The Walking Dead art style is not a unique enough art styles that, well, it's not an enthralling enough art style, I guess would be the better word to use, because nobody stole it, and nobody, like, even for a second tried to copy it or really even appreciated it. Which you would have thought that would have happened if that was the way things were going to go. Hey, can I just hit the auto button? Nope. Apparently I cannot. Wonder what... Yeah, I wonder what the auto button is supposed to do. Let's see. 3 of those. There we go. There is also, I suppose, a split here to think about, considering The Walking Dead Season 1, then Season 2, then Season 3, each of those having episodic releases, where a more traditional visual novel like Grisaia probably just has one long episode, one 60 to 200 hour episode for each game that wraps up, and then maybe it's a year or two originally between Phantom Trigger 1 and Phantom Trigger 2, maybe even 4 years between it, but you also now have such a history that you're getting the entire 5-volume games sold for roughly $65 in Japanese. That is a decent expense, unless you're unless Phantom Trigger actually isn't just incredibly short for a visual novel, which I think even at that, even Season 1 of The Walking Dead still probably is much shorter than what you would have had in any standard visual novel. I suppose it is also worth mentioning they're pointing out that Grisaia Phantom Trigger 5.5 is available for Switch but not included in this collection, and so that might be a slight improvement on the 5th story, or it might be an alternate telling or a half continuation. Moving on, OpenCritic has an article. Innersloth explains why updates for Among Us are taking so long, if you're interested. I think the answer to that is probably fairly obvious, though. Let's see. Gonna put this on the field. So ideally what you would want to do is play this to discard this to play this on the 4th turn. But you can't really do that. Well, you can only on the 4th turn. By the 5th turn, this enhances, which makes this card way more difficult to play at that point in that combination. Gamatsu has an article here. Kotoba no Puzzle Emoji Patan Encore for the PS4, PC, iOS, and Android has a debut trailer. Looks like a very Japanese pictograph game. There definitely would have to be some localization for this to make any sense to me. And I wouldn't be surprised one bit if that doesn't happen. Clash gain +1. Okay. Gamatsu has an article here. Story of Seasons Pioneers of Olive Town expansion pass announced. This looks like a kid-friendly style Stardew Valley type game. I'm gonna try and burn through all the news because I know there's really no good reason to stretch this out. We may not get all the daily quests done today, but and we may not even get all the news done today. But yeah, I don't want to end up streaming all the way till midnight. Honestly, I would think that the nightly streams might work a little bit better nowadays, but I don't think they really do. This, then this. This will do 4 damage to this, I suppose. And then this. Give me back that.
Stream on!
Okay, now. Is there an evolve here we want to specifically do?
Be gone.
I don't think so, so we'll just kill that.
Ooh, my stomach.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Glory's Witness. This looks like it's just a black and white Chinese platformer shooter of some sort. Yeah, it doesn't look particularly great. English is not supported, $4.49. What's funny here is, if you told me this was like a 69-cent game, I would have maybe said, alright, that seems like a fair effort from a small Chinese developer. But the standards are just so incredibly low for most Chinese developed games that when it even looks slightly decent, they want $5 or $4.49 for it. It's ridiculous. 2 damage to an enemy follower. Put that on the field. Can I discard a card? Do I have anything that would let me discard a card? Okay, 2 damage to that.
Foul forces of darkness, bow before my tempest. Oh, the blueprints!
And is there a reason to evolve? No.
Wind, grant them courage! I'm already a proper lady, you know.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Superstorm Melon Date. And regardless of this trailer that seems just to be deceptive, this looks terrible. Like, you would have to be able to draw particularly well to convince me to want to play a visual novel with the oddly lizard-like skin people. Like, the one thing most visual novels have in common is that they look good. This does not. It is not easy on the eyes. It's free. English, allegedly full audio. I don't believe that for a second. Okay. Can we do anything to survive this? We have Bane, which could save us a little bit, but not much. We can do 6 enemy to a follower. 6 damage. We can do an evolution here. And do that. And then we lose. Here we have a game called Trapmania. This looks like an old Windows game. Looks not interesting. $5.99. English, allegedly full audio. It's fair to point this out here. Here you have a game that looks very much like a Western game, since it only supports English, and it is also asking for a ridiculous amount of money. So there are a decent number of companies out there that try to pull that scam. Taratopia has a review for a game called Skull, the Hero Slayer. This looks way better animated as a platform beat 'em up game. Alright, looks like an actual game. Let's see what they have to say about it. Oh, they say it's an 8.0. Good. Skull the Hero Slayer is a delight despite some bullet spongy enemies. The varied combat and surprisingly engaging story makes it each run a joy. I guess it's a roguelike. Excellent pros are excellent varied combat, engaging story, simple addictive gameplay loop, and great class variety. Cons, bullet spongy enemies, some heads feel weak, and boring skill tree. Alright, well, that sounds interesting. It's always nice to see something that at least has got a chance to be interesting. Yeah, it definitely feels like for 2021 we may have a lot of bad games and very few and far between good games released. Next we have a game on Steam here called Cannon Lab 13 that feels like it's designed specifically to feel like it is a Portal style game, but honestly this is more just a physics game. And not really much of a physics game, in my opinion, either. It is nicely visually polished as I watch it being played. This is obviously not made by Valve. It looks more like a cell phone game that has been ported. Like a single screen game like this definitely would work better on a portable device. $3.99 English only. If this looked particularly interesting, maybe, but it only has 20 levels for $4. That's pretty expensive. Yeah, I just don't think you can pull that one off. Okay. So if I wait till the 4th turn, I can discard this card and then bring it back. Next we have a game on Steam called Worst Nightmare. This looks like a asset flip horror game. Yeah, there's nothing interesting there. $11.99 English only. Let's see. Strike, restore to difference. Wait. Just gonna wait. Game Institute has an article. An industry veteran, Peter Moore, has returned to games as the Unity senior vice president, I suppose is what SVP means, of its sports and live entertainment team. He was, for a brief time, the CEO of the Liverpool Football Club, soccer in the UK. I definitely recognize Peter Moore, but I don't know if he's particularly good or particularly interested. He previously served as like the president of Sega of America and the CVP of Microsoft Interactive Entertainment business arm, and then the head of EA Sports and the CEO of EA. I think he is definitely all about sports and sports only. So him being involved in anything other than sports is almost certainly a mistake. But as long as he is in sports, I can't, off the top of my head, think that he has done something horrible. What? I thought that was going to do 6 damage. No, it didn't. Alright, well. Dragonfolk's Whale is different than Dragonfolk's Whale. Oh, no, you just draw cards when it's discarded. You do 6 damage when you play it. Yep. If anything, I suppose it just is a call to a lack of growth at a certain level. Once you're a C-level person, once you're a CEO, you either move to different industries or you just stay there till you retire. And particularly in the video game industry, there is a decent argument that people stick around because they have reached the peak of their careers earlier than most people would have.
Is that a human?
I think the CEO of something like AT&T is probably a good 4 or 5 years older than the CEO of a video game company.
What was I?
And certainly you could make an argument that they have a disconnection from the average gamer, but that probably was always the case. Like, the average programmer really can't have that much of a connection to even an entry-level brand new programmer that just out of college can't have that much connection to an average gamer because they're spending so much of their time programming the games they can't actually be playing much of the games. Whereas video game critics should not have that same excuse, and yet they seem to often try to make it. But yeah, you have to assume that it takes at minimal 4 times, in more likelihood 400 times, the amount of time to program a game that it does to play a game. Okay. Let's see. I think we might be able to win here. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Lost ukulele statues resurface in local markets. So apparently these statues went missing after a company shut down, and somebody found them in the Philippines in some storage facility. Which, no surprise there. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a theft of some sort, where somebody stole it and then they sat on it, the stolen item, for many years. Let's see. In 2016, so you're talking like 5 years of sitting on potential stolen goods, and then selling them potentially in a completely different country. Did they actually go missing in the Philippines? They were stored in a warehouse somewhere. Unfortunately, the company that held the items mysteriously went bust, and the statues never made their way to the appropriate hands. Now it appears they're being sold on the open market in the Philippines. So, it doesn't even seem like it was a first and foremost Philippines heist. Discard a card and deal 4 damage.
Here comes the tidal wave.
Didn't really want to discard a card in that case,
It
but
won't be long now.
Melancholy, keep my heart weighs heavy.
you can do that. You can do that. Then end the turn. There is a decent argument to make. Is this really video game news, or does it really matter? Like, at the end of the day, I guess it matters if you like video game memorabilia and tchotchkes and collectibles, but is that something that really should be encouraged by anybody at all, or is that really just kind of a ridiculous ridiculous just money grabs that the greedy companies try to do?
In all its forms.
That was just a decoy. Let us pray for victory.
But yeah, I guess there are enough suckers out there like that would want collectibles. Okay, Eternal Whale, I think, is the thing that we can do. Let's see, whenever this follower comes into play, deal 2 damage. When this follower leaves play, put 4 1-play things into the Eternal Well into your deck. Okay. What else can we do? Nothing. Just in the turn. So this next article is going to be slightly suggestive, but I still think fairly YouTube family friendly. TechRaptor has an article here. Honey Pop 2 release date is finally set for February 2021. They've been fairly slow as far as working on the release of this game, and it is gonna bring back a lot of the characters that we saw, particularly the main girl, and then they're going to introduce some other characters. I believe this is the character that, depending on your choices, can be either pre-op or post-op transgendered, and caused a little bit of controversy in the idea that I think they were kind of going more for a Futanari dick girl type concept with her, and it turned into a transgendered person, which there's differences there, certainly. Some of these characters are new. Here you see also the match 3 gems that are used in the game when you're not doing the dating part of it. Some of these characters are supposed to be just a little bit older than they were before, but I don't think they're going to be depicted particularly older, because why would you in a sex game want the characters to age? And some of the secret characters might show up, might not. So it's coming out February 8th, 2021. I've covered Honey Pop 1 on my channel, and there is, I suppose, a argument to thinking about playing Honey Pop 2. Things certainly have changed. I don't think I'd probably get a community guideline strike as long as I'm careful, and particularly as long as I don't apply like any uncensored patch to it, which I think that will would be fairly easy. I made a mistake when covering the first game, in which I did apply an uncensored patch halfway through, and then I had to censor the video. But also, Honey Pop 2 is not going to probably be much different than Honey Pop 1, and I would recommend playing Honey Pop 1 first and foremost before playing the sequel, and then giving it 6 months and playing the sequel. If you like match 3 games and dating sim games that give you minimal amount of sex scenes, like so many other sex games, even though this is a Western dating sim game, it is very much in line with Japanese sex games, in which there's a lot of grinding and gameplay for 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 sex scenes per character, which often are literally just one image. They're not doing anything really crazy with Honey Pop 2 where they're trying to like fully animate it or anything like that. I think Honey Pop was fully voice acted, but I could be misremembering that, and I am just not getting anywhere. Man, we are so consistent with Shadowverse as far as just not succeeding. Getting a decent amount of frame drops today too. Moving on, Check Raptor has an article. A Ocarina of Time prototype and beta content has been discovered. Which, okay. So, here's, I guess, what prototype discs kind of looked like. Which that kind of makes sense. And some of this content might be interesting to people. A lot of this stuff would be great if it was just released by Nintendo as a collector's edition. Like, this is artwork and unlockables you get for a remaster, re-release of Ocarina of Time, but they failed horribly to do that. It's a little surprising that they, after Breath of the Wild, didn't potentially greenlight a remaster of Ocarina of Time. It would make sense to use the Breath of the Wild engine to have the exact same game, same dungeon design, just with new skins on it. Of course, they very well may not just have the code, or it may not be compatible code. It may not be as easy as just copying and pasting the level designs and character designs and ability designs. And that would basically be a remake, not a remaster at that point. They probably should do a remake. Well, arguably, a lot of the Zelda games after Ocarina of Time are just remakes of Ocarina of Time, so it might actually be smarter to just remaster it and improve the graphics and not change anything else. Moving on, we have a Gammon Sutra article here. A prolific F-Zero Star Fox artist named Takaya Imamura retires from Nintendo. He worked there for 32 years, which is not particularly the longest amount of time. But yeah, this is potentially a point where we're starting to see more older creators at Nintendo, Nintendo of Japan, or Nintendo of America retiring because the CEO retired and because everybody's just being aged out. And this opens up the doorway, certainly, to an argument being made that could be made as far as there not being any young blood at Nintendo to really replace anything. You can't replace a 60, 70-year-old who retires with a 50-year-old, which is what the Japanese would definitely love to do, and expect much to change. And I think Nintendo's best chance for success is for a few things to change, and that's not likely to happen. And I think eventually people are just going to get tired of Nintendo's BS. Like the Joy-Con drift is a great example of that. Like, if there's an entire generation right now that that simply refuses to Nintendo simply refuses to fix, then that entire generation of players are going to remember this Joy-Con drift problem, and they're going to be very upset about it. And Nintendo Switch may be the new dud console, instead of being the foundation of a whole new generation's fandom, which is what Nintendo would like it to be. Or if there's just a whole bunch of microtransaction games on Switch eShop, or just a whole bunch of terrible internet support. Like, I've already seen one video going around showing a kid that wants a PC over even a PlayStation 5. There could quickly become a growing generation that only wants to play PC gaming, and they'll have no fandom or love for specific companies. I doubt very many people playing Among Us or Fortnite right now know the companies that make those games or care. Let's see. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. The Monster Hunter movie arrives on Blu-ray March 2021. Right now, you can only see this movie in theaters, and I imagine there won't be too many people that even bother to watch it or review it. This definitely feels like it is a half military movie with some Monster Hunter people that seem to know what they're doing mixing in with the military. I wouldn't be surprised if this is any better than something like the Resident Evil movies, which maybe there's an audience for that, maybe there isn't. At a certain point, action movies have always, in my opinion, been in existence because they killed some time and you wanted to go to a theater. Now that it's practically impossible or just insane to just go to a movie theater to watch any random action movie, something like the Monster Hunter movie probably is going to fail miserably. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Monster Hunter movie ends up on Amazon Prime or Netflix fairly quickly, and in a streaming service like that, it might have some more value, and at that point I might fast forward through it and check it out. We're getting an increasing number of movies, either animated or not, that are around video games, and at a certain point I'm gonna have to just say no more of that. There is there is an argument, certainly, that I feel while playing the Telltale games, that the entire Telltale series might have been better suited if it had actually simply been an animated series instead of a video game with multiple choices, because the multiple choices don't matter and there's few and far between. There definitely is a section in The Walking Dead where it was just a conversation for felt like 12 minutes with no choices whatsoever popping up for even dialogue choices. And even though they do tend to give you, even in the final season, 4 or 5 dialogue choices, the truth of the matter is you're really the only ones that matter are 2 at most for the entire episode. So 4 episodes, you've got 8 important choices at most in for each character that you interact with that's an important character. So maybe 40 choices, 40 to 100 choices throughout the course of 8 hours of gameplay. It does feel like The Walking Dead will be 8 hours at most. Not even making it to 10. Here we have a game on Steam called Plan Z, which oddly does look slightly more visually polished than most. I guess the question here would be, is this a multiplayer game? It's early access, $8.99, single player only, English full audio. There's a lot going against this, like a kind of bad logo, but these monsters do look at least slightly different. I'd say some of this UI could use a little bit more polish, but it's not terrible. I'm going to put it on the fall list. Maybe because I just have lowered standards these days, but whatever. So
You don't want to miss this. I am without rival.
go ahead and evolve this.
Be gone.
Must not forget my debt. Bow down.
That was delightful.
Next, we have a Gamma Sutra article. A European Commission has fined Valve and others $9.4 million for geo-blocking games. 5 major publishers: Valve, Bandai Namco, Capcom, Focus Home, Koch Media, and ZeniMax. They've all found they're being engaged in geo-blocking practices by restricting cross-border sales of certain PC titles based on where players live in the European Economic Area. This is a push, certainly the EU has been pushing, is the idea that you should be able to buy video games in Europe at Ukrainian prices, even if you are living in a much richer country like France or until recently the UK, and it is certainly a factor in the fact that the European Union is economically very disparate. There is also a whole issue around like migrant workers, in which they would bring in cheap labor from Ukraine to be migrant workers in the UK, and that was one of the talking points certainly that led to Brexit, is the fact that actual UK citizens were getting paid less or having less opportunities to have jobs because they were bringing in workers. From a United Statesian perspective, yeah, it would really, really suck, and it actually is happening. Disney has been caught doing it, but it would really suck if every company could just fly in like the poorest of the poorest Chinese and Indian laborers to the US, give them basically no rights as citizens, pay them below minimum wage in some cases, or just pay them minimum wage, and then disenfranchise people in a certain area that have to live in that area, and have to pay rent in that area, and have to pay utilities and taxes in that area, because certainly the opposite option does not exist. I cannot, as a United Statesian, easily move to China because it's cheaper and survive in that way, and that a lot has to do with the language barrier, but it also does have to do with cultural barrier and other things, and just general laws. And so certainly a thing like this comes down to just how do you feel about the EU and what the EU is trying to do in a lot of cases. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if none of these companies ever pay, or if they pay and it just doesn't matter, or if all these companies just say that they just say, forget it, we will we will not do business in the EU. Like, this is always the argument that gets made against the EU is that the reason why the EU has not a lot of businesses going on is because it is so pro-consumer, and often they combine that with the EU being pro-worker too, that no company wants to do business with in the EU. I used Ukraine as an example, but actually in the story they're saying it's Chechnya, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. But yeah, all Eastern Bloc countries, all poor countries. I think maybe Poland would consider themselves not Eastern Bloc. And they wore region lock Steam activation keys. Apparently some people cooperated and they got a 10% reduction. Or maybe this is a argument that if you pay up now, there will be a 10 or 15% reduction. Man, I am not accomplishing anything. I don't know if this is my watchdog is now working too well and it's just rebooting the router, which I don't think is the case, or if this is just a case of the internet being particularly slow in the nighttime. Let's see. Connection unstable. Please check your internet connection. And yeah, definitely is my connection does just seem to be unstable. So it might be better, since we're hitting 10 here, to play this one game and move into a experiment that I haven't ever done before of just covering video game news and not even playing the card game, because yeah, this isn't working. Like I can't load any pages. And I once again don't want to stream all the way into the midnight. Finally. Let's see. Gametsu has an article here. A new Pokemon Snap Ecology Japanese TV commercial has come out, and you can see some Japanese kids opening the door for a Pokemon Snap track, which, if that interests you, Gametsu, it's coming out April 30th worldwide, the game is.
I only did what I had to.
Alright, well, I got a couple things done. Tech Raptor has an article here. Valve Index shortage was made worse by other tech companies. I have heard some stories about this, that there is just a slowdown in production of chips, probably in China and other countries, due to the pandemic, and that has led to a reduction in production of consoles and probably cell phones and probably a lot of things. That might be the only way we see a reduction in consumerism ever happening, is just a lack of bare components. But yeah, that certainly doesn't succeed well. That's not how you'd like that to go. You'd like to see people not desiring gadgets unless they actually are good gadgets, not just people always ever struggling to get things that are sold out. And I guess if you think about like the Wii was sold out and hyper popular, and people just waited and bought from scalpers. And I imagine that would be the case for most people until most people are completely broke. Yeah, I actually do have a lot of things that I need to win at. I may have to play off screen. That's gonna suck. Taratopia has an article here. Arc System Works website was likely hacked. Feel like, yeah, here we got some old school, just ridiculous, stupid things listed on their website. Feel like there might have been a controversy around Arc System Works at some point recently, but I could just be dreaming that up. There was a controversy as far as, I believe it was a Mortal Kombat tournament where they disqualified somebody for being critical of the creators of Mortal Kombat, which, I mean, at a certain level, the censorship is getting just insane.
Time for me to prove myself.
This one's for my family.
The Fall Guys also came out and said there had been some kind of mix-up, and Fall Guys is not coming to Xbox Game Pass, which that feels like something broke down late into negotiations there. I'm surprised there are even any tournaments for somebody to controversially get disqualified for. These game tournaments in particular are just insane in that they're disqualifying people. They really need to kind of figure out either an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that's not a disqualification, that's more, I guess, maybe a fine system like they do in football, or just handle it better. Like, you know that these esports athletes are going to have opinions and be aggressive and controversial, so you're gonna have to deal with that better than just being butthurt about it and disqualifying someone for being critical of your own company. I mean, remember, it was only a couple of weeks ago that Nintendo allegedly canceled an entire tournament because people were supporting ROM, like, fan game makers. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article here. Miniclip has acquired the online soccer manager developer Game Basics. Haven't heard of either of those companies. Let's see. If I do this, probably nothing happens. If I do this, probably nothing happens, so I'm just gonna do that. We have a game on Steam here called Quantris, which is just a low-effort clone of Tetris. It's free to play, English only. Nothing unique there. Even if it was a student project, it wouldn't be worth showing off. Here we have a game called Neon, which is a neon physics ball rolling game, which we haven't seen a ton of neon looking games, but they still always feel like an eyesore. $5.39, bunch of languages. He claims to support nothing there. Where's my mouse cursor? There it is. Today would have been kind of a great day for there not to have been very much video game news, but unfortunately that was not the case.
My domain reaches to the end of the skies.
Can't attack. Okay. Gamatsu has Disgaea 6 Defiance of Destiny demo now available in Japan. You can see there's quite a collection of Disgaea characters by the time they get to the 6th game. Unfortunately, I don't think Disgaea 6 has really changed in its gameplay mechanic any different from Disgaea 1. It's just improved upon it, improved the graphics and such. So that was the thing that kind of made me rage quit the first game, is it was just an incredibly slow process with a strategic placement mechanic. And that probably means I would never want to play any tile placement type strategy games.
Which fighter can go the distance?
Starting to
You're
evolve.
done for. Keep those eyes here. I can't look.
Yeah, the only hope I have of getting all the victories I'd like to get today is several quick disconnects, and we can see when you're having network trouble, that doesn't inherently for Shadowverse mean you get quick disconnects in your favor. If anything, it probably means you lose more often. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Tilting Point is opening a studio in Russia to work on multiple projects. I don't recognize any games made by Tilting Point. They make FTX games. Then they published Narcos Cartel World and The Walking Dead Free Casino Slots and Criminal Minds, the mobile game. And they acquired the tech platform Gondola and mobile strategy RPG Star Trek Timelines. So they've done some things, but it looks like mostly mobile garbage. Let me think. Am I uploading anything at the moment? No. I don't think so. But, you know, there might be something. Let me just log into my server and make sure that's not being a pain in the butt. I have not worked on my server in a long time. See, I'm disconnecting and I'm losing. I'll just shut down all the services on my server real quick and see if that fixes it. I don't think it will, but yeah. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. New Minecraft snapshot lets you play with glow squid. I believe they brought out something else besides the glow squid, glow lichen. Also, so we can see Minecraft is still adding content. Gamma Sutra has an article here. The casino game studio Huge is looking to raise $150 million during the initial public offering. I feel like a bunch of companies are going to very quickly find that their initial public offerings fail miserably. Here we have a game called Slime Sprint, which looks like nothing if it was going to load. Let's see, it's $6.29, English full audio. It's ridiculous. It's not resetting my router, so some internet is coming through. It's just not a lot. See, I imagine that there's just a huge spike in the late night when people are watching Netflix and things like that. So I may not make much progress here today. So what we should probably do, since we're struggling so much with the internet, is just cover the news and skip the games that are on Steam. We'll try that. So TechRaptor has an article here. The Trails series characters represent Japan's longest Wikipedia article, which is, I guess, to say that the Trails series is a very long running series that is kind of hard to get into if you're a Western player, considering that a couple of the games haven't been released in the West, and the Trails series in general is broken up into like 3 sub-series. Yeah, but if I can't even get the pages to load, it's just running into problems on top of problems on top of problems with the network. Just constantly trying to reconnect. And a buffer can only help you so much as far as streaming. Yeah, the thing is, if the Wi-Fi was resetting, then it would disconnect me from my server. For sure. And so I'll use that as a flag to tell me if it is resetting. I don't think it is, though. I haven't seen any indication of that. It seems like what we're just running into is actual congestion. Or at least as far as I can tell, actual congestion. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if it turns out that there is a decent number of shenanigans happening on the back end of my ISP that just starts limiting services and messing with people so that they get a lesser quality product. Right, I'm just going to go to the title here and stop trying to load that. Instead, I'm just going to see if we can get anything to load. Here we have a Gamma Sutra article. The impending IPO of PUBG studio parent company Krafton could be as much as 27 billion, which, yeah, that is probably a great example of people getting in very late to a company, putting 27 billion into a company that's making a game that nobody's really playing that much these days. Is kind of crazy. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Opera has opened a new video game division and confirms it purchased Yo-Yo Games. Opera, the browser, I assume. I don't really feel like they're going to be in a great platform position to be a video game developer, but any company could pivot. That's always a possibility. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo slammed with yet another Joy-Con lawsuit, which, yeah, this is a Joy-Con drift lawsuit once again. Yeah, there definitely are people that are just not happy with Nintendo and the Switch's Joy-Cons in particular. In fairness, I think it is also worth mentioning that Android 11 came out with some level of support to connect like PlayStation and Xbox controllers to Android cell phones, and it seems like it's not working for half of the people and working for the other half, which is a terrible situation to be in, because that means there's a major bug or a lot of bugs, and if Stadia is supposed to work, they need to fix and squash all those bugs if Google really cares to make Stadia work. Otherwise, frankly, Joy-Con compatibility, or not Joy-Con, but gamepad compatibility should have been integrated much earlier into Android, because there definitely are Linux drivers out there, so it wouldn't have been that hard, at least for the standard Xbox and the standard PlayStation controllers. I could understand a third-party controller not really working. I actually saw an interesting gadget that lets you plug it into the bottom and the top plugs of an Xbox One controller, and then it switches and remaps all the buttons and the frequencies to a PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 controller, including like adding tilt controls and a touchpad mode, so you're not missing out on any feature. It's just kind of awkward with the touchpad thing because it's it's not a, it's a virtual mouse instead of an actual touchpad. But yeah, if you really love the Xbox One controller and want to play PlayStation games, an adapter like that is definitely an option and fairly exciting. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, resin changes and more coming up to Genshin Impact 1.3 update. One of the things that is coming out is, I believe they directly are going to be able to play and interact with Xbox and PS4 controllers on the iOS, which I haven't heard any like low-level support for controllers on iOS. I just don't think they care that much. Now would be kind of a great time for Apple to put out support for something like that while Fortnite is not connected. Fortnite not being listed on the iOS. That way you can have a scenario where the other games on iOS look more attractive and act as a kind of buffer between Apple and dissatisfied gamers. This is still just reconnecting like crazy. Well, it can't be my server at this point. I shut that down. I didn't think it was. Alright. What? I mean, all I can do, because the tabs are suspended, and maybe at a certain point I should just stop with the suspending of tabs. And yeah, maybe I should unsuspend all tabs before I start streaming, just as a way of saving time. That might be the better move going forward. TechRaptor has an article here. Ender Lily's Quietest of the Nights is both bleak and beautiful. So yeah, this was a game we've seen before and it caught my attention. Do they have an actual review for it? Nope, it's not out until January 21. Let's see, here we have a game called Watch Me Stream My Mental Breakdown review, which seems like it's a kind of joke game of some sort. They give it a 6.0. It's great fun for a couple hours or so. The casual nature almost made me wish I could play it on my phone every so often, if only really for the card games. Still, it's a nice break from the more demanding games out there today, especially if you're looking for something new, but then they give it a 6.0, which isn't really a good review. Unique concept, cute, relaxing art and music, intriguing card game mechanics. Cons, you can't skip dialogue. No mode for just playing the card games, and it's too darn realistic. TechRaptor has an article here. Green Hell Update Spirits the Amazonia Part 1 is a frou new story experience. I have no idea what half of those words even mean. That really... But apparently this is a game on Steam and Switch. It's coming to VR, PS4, and Xbox One eventually. See, we just don't have bandwidth to hit play on a video because it just won't load. Or even click the Steam link, it won't work. Here we have a Gamasutra blog, types of game currencies and mobile free-to-play. Which, I guess if you're interested in that, you can read that article. Let's try to burn through all of this. There's definitely some redundant bits of news here, so some of this might work. But I'm basically getting a timeout from like every page I try to load. The Dead or Alive developer has left, I believe it was Konami, to form his own company, so we may start to see some different treating of the Dead or Alive series. We may start to see more Dead or Alive beach volleyball uncensored and released in the West. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he'll go more insular and we won't see any of the Dead or Alive fighting game or the beach volleyball game coming out. It may have not been the actual creator of the game too. It may have just been an artist. Gamatsu has an article here. Corpse Party Blood Covered Repeated Fear for PS4 and Switch Chapter 1 Prologue gameplay is now being shown. This is a half visual novel, half strategy zombie game. First look at the enhanced ports in action. We may actually be in a case where I have some of the Corpse Party games and I think maybe I just have the first one. And so it would kind of suck if I now found out that they were being developed. Here's that game Green Hell on Steam, which is on my wish list. Alright, so okay, it's a survival game. It's getting updates. That's nice. Let's see, we have a Gamatsu article here. Scarlet Hood and the Wicked Wood launches early access on February 10th. This looks like it's a platformer with some visual novel artistic. I don't particularly like the way these are animated, but heck, maybe they'll do something different. This is a Little Red Riding Hood grown-up type story. This might be more puzzles than platforming. Yeah, I remember seeing this. Solve puzzles, survive a narrative time loop. Okay, that might be a brief distraction. I imagine that won't be a particularly interesting overall game. Gamatsu has Alt Deus Beyond Chronos coming to PlayStation VR on April 15th. Kind of wish there was a video for what this is. It's a virtual reality visual novel. That seems pretty insane to even think as a concept. We have the Famitsu review scores for issue 1677. This would be, I guess, the software scores until you have the hardware scores, which I guess we'll just quickly highlight this. And then I'll cover this when we get to full sales. You can see here there's a special note for Disguise 6 that it takes 30 hours to clear and 200 hours including additional activities. That was another problem with Disgaea, certainly, is it was just a daunting looking game. 31, 32, 33, 34. Buddy Mission Bond for the Switch, apparently the best game of the week so far. I feel like we had already talked about this game, Kotoba no Puzzle Moji Piton Encore. Either that or there was two puzzle games that were very Japanese. Yeah, it doesn't feel like my duplicates are catching some of these tabs. See, if I try to get two tabs to open at the same time, it then slows it down. I'm getting just enough throughput that where I can get one tab to open at the same time. Yeah, I need to just have all the tabs open and disable the suspender, the Great Suspender plugin when I'm about to stream. That's just how it needs to play, and then I can enable it after the fact. And but also on my new computer, it may not really matter if I'm taking up 16 gigabytes potentially of RAM for tabs being open. That very well may not affect games because I have so much now. That was the plan, to have a lot. Like Gamatsu has an article here. Summer Pockets Reflection Blue is coming to Switch in Japan. Available as a standalone and an upgrade to the currently available Summer Pockets. This looks like a anime visual novel, possibly dating game. Not a lot more that you can say on that. We just have to see if they are coming to the West first and foremost. Same is true for the otome visual novel Bakumatsu Renka Shinsen Gumi Junchu Hokoku no Shi, which has been announced for the Switch and PC. Which, yeah. I'll just say look up what an otome young maiden visual novel is if you're not familiar, instead of going over and explaining it once again. Open Critic has an article. Another batch of games have been announced for Xbox Game Pass. Let's see. The games are Death Square, Death Gambit, Final Fantasy 15, Fishing Sim, World Pro Tour, Gris, Indivisible, Reigns, Game of Thrones, and Sea Salt. Which I guess that would have been in that announcement, that there was a confusion and they thought Fall Guys was coming. Open Critic has a Rocket League and X Games are teaming up. Read that article if that interests you. Yep. We have a game called Jack Gian with class introduction trailers. Which, okay. I don't know this game. This art style definitely looks different and very artsy, to say the least. But can I actually get something like this to play? This probably is just a visual novel, but it does strike me as a visual novel that has a decent number of people in it. Which, yeah. Okay, that doesn't mean a lot, but may mean a little bit. Gamatsu has Paradigm Paradox launching May 27th in Japan. At a certain level, I am going to have to hit a point where I just say skip it on streams if they're just going to be this awful as far as the internet connection goes. Like, if I just cannot stream at all between around 8 in the evening Central Time and 10 in the evening Central Time, then I may just say skip it and miss a day. Which arguably at a certain point I probably should say skip it way more often than I do, because there's often not that much video game news, and I could do better things with my time or just relax more instead of being a consistent live streamer, which has been not super successful. YouTube totally lied about being consistent as far as live streaming, unless they meant for you to live stream every day, all day, and then maybe that would have worked better. Maybe their algorithm just can't handle live streaming on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Maybe they meant every single day. That is definitely the case, I think, for a lot of live streamers on Twitch, is that the only way they make sure their business stays in business is that they have to live stream almost every day, maybe taking the weekends off. Moving on, Open Critic has a article. Pokemon Go is holding an Incense Day featuring Mareep, that character, I believe. Which I guess that means people are still playing Pokemon Go, which is frankly slightly surprising because there's not been a lot of opportunity to go outside. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Chained Echo's Turtle Race minigame features a 15-second track from mathcore band Zilf. So I guess if you've heard of Zilf, that might make some sense. Otherwise, this seems like this is just a mini game inside of an RPG. Which is coming out in 2021. Maybe there is some idea there that makes sense to some people, but I don't think it does. Here we have a game on Steam called Stream Savers, which is some kind of clicker heavy gacha game for YouTuber and Twitch streamers to play. Interacts with Twitch commands and such. It's early access, it's $8.99 and needs a third-party account of Twitch, which that makes sense. English only. I don't know. Like, if I was going to be a Twitch streamer, this might make sense. $8.99 is not a huge investment if you're a medium Twitch streamer and you are getting more than $8.99 at some point in donations. Although I really would have to question whether any fandom of any Twitch streamer would be interested in this. It is an interesting idea as far as just let me talk to the audience and respond to comments type background art, which inherently that is the reason why I play Shadowverse in the first place, is to talk about the news and respond to comments, and if I was particularly getting a lot of comments, then it would be quite the hassle to try that. Try to play a game and respond. It's a hassle just trying to cover the news and trying to and playing the game. So something that is completely idle and doesn't require me to do anything would be an interesting idea. But also I wouldn't really want to promote a product that is designed simply, well, I would have some reservations about promoting a product like that. I don't know if I can really verbalize why. It seems kind of scammy, but it may actually be a legitimate product that solves a legitimate problem for a niche class of people, i.e. streamers. Here we have a game on Steam called Dark Spot, where you just drag around the spot, and it's a physics game. It's $14.24, ridiculously expensive. Right, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on every single tab on Steam, and if any of them can load, I'll cover them. But if I click on the tab and it's not loaded, then I will choose to just end the stream. Here we have a game called Lamp Chronicle, which, let's see if we can get any screenshots here. Looks like it's a platforming, very nicely polished UI game. They're calling it a Metroidvania Souls-like for $13.49. It's English and Korean. I think that deserves a follow. There's a couple of region-locked games that have come out just for Japan. One is Seal, No Surge, Ushi, Watari, Hoshi, or whatever. But you can see they're region-locked, and so you can't play them or even see their pages outside of Japan. The other one is R No Surge, Ode to an Unborn, whatever, ... Well, I'm pointing to like the URL bar, but you can't see the URL bar, can you? So yeah, region locking happens on Steam. We kind of knew that. It doesn't happen very often, frankly, but it does happen. The What's on Steam algorithm seems to only catch games that are unlocked in the West or in my region in the United States, because I don't see what's on Steam clicking me to links very often that can't be seen, and normally it says the game is missing completely because it's been removed already. Here we have a game called Chef Chin, which seems like it's a beat up monsters and then cook the monsters, kind of like Battle Chef Brigade. Different art style than Battle Chef Brigade, and frankly Battle Chef Brigade was actually a fairly uninteresting game. It just did not work well for me. Is this a multiplayer only game? It's early access, it's $6.99, English, Chinese, Korean. I'll put it on the fall list, but I do think there is definitely a chance that it's not going to be a full interesting product. Here we have a game called Vector Race, which is nothing for $13.29. Here we have a game called Sunset Drive 1986, which is nothing. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the same developer publisher. $4.49 this time. It requires a third-party end-user license agreement. Here we have a game called Lure Free, which seems to be some kind of horror zombie game, but we can see it's already marked as negative. Early access, free to play, MMO. I don't know if I really would ever want to play an MMO with zombies in it, even if I was going to play MMOs, which I don't. It seems like it would get boring very fast. Here we have a game called Rear Business, which seems to be an asset flip survival type game. It's early access, $9.99. I'm not going to put that on the fall list. Here we have 4096, which is just a 2048 clone for $8.99 and one achievement. That's garbage. Here we have a game called 2 Months, which sounds about how long it would have taken them to make a blocky asset flip game like this. $7.99, English only. Yeah, we're not really finding any gems. Here we have a game called Akmal, which looks like a Windows 95 game. $8.99, English only. Gonna skip that. Well, it does seem like I got all these tabs to open up finally. This is the ridiculous part about this. This is gonna be where all of a sudden the network starts to work and I'm ready to wrap up. Here we have a game called Surprise Party, which looks like it is kind of a horror dungeon crawler game. Can't really say. It looks like it's been made with RPG Maker. They're calling it a horror stealth puzzle game. It's free. It's English full audio. I guess what I would say is if this looks interesting to you, just play it. Like, I'm not going to put this on the wish list or fall list. It doesn't look visually polished enough that it needs to be promoted, and it's free, so whatever. Here we have a game called Blockchain Tycoon, which anytime I see a game with blockchain in the name, I wonder if there is an actual blockchain miner inside the game. You can see it's mixed. It's a whole bunch of languages for $14.99. Next we have a game called P, which looks to me like an RPG Maker game. Probably Chinese. $2.99. Chinese, yep. A really bad thumbnail. Here we have a game called Cubo ao Topo, which sounds like that's Spanish or Portuguese, Brazil. Which, yeah, this looks like It's another Twitch channel game. Early access, English not supported, $4.99, Portuguese, Brazil. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's anything of interest. Next, we have a game called Match Hero, which looks like it's some kind of math game of no real interest. Yeah. $1.39, bunch of languages. Got about 10 more tabs. Here we have Cosmic Break Universal, which this actually does look like a game, or I'm just being distracted by the anime girl with the cleavage. This kind of looks like a mobile phone game that has been kind of ported. Or it's an asset flip game with some anime girls and mechs. Early access, free to play, English, Japanese, Chinese, with in-app purchases. Cosmic Break Universal is an improved version of Cosmic Break, a action MMORPG. It was first released in 2008 and it's been running for 12 years. So it's got some history there, but probably not that much. Just because something's been running for a long time doesn't mean it's ever been good or particularly popular. I've never heard of this before. So yeah, I have to skip that. Here we have a game called Made VR, M-A-D-E, the interactive movie, 01 Runaway. This definitely feels like the Saw movie, if you were going to remake the Saw movie into a VR game with what look like probably Korean actors. Yeah, that looks like Korean writing. They're calling it a visual novel for $14.39. English, Chinese, and Korean. I'm going to put this on the follow list not because I'd actually buy it. That's fairly expensive. Not incredibly expensive for VR, generally speaking, but it feels like there's multiple episodes coming here. And then they've got a streaming guide, which also means they may be upset if I was to stream something like this, even if I did have VR. But I would like to see the reception on a game like that. That probably is one of the cases where VR might actually work fairly nicely, is if you do have live action footage and it feels like the real world, although at a certain point the real world may not be desirable in a horror game like that. Here we have a game called Leave the Red, which just looks like it's a dark screenshot dungeon crawler. Does not look very polished. It's free. English only. So, yeah, that doesn't seem like it's much. All the tabs suspended again. But theoretically, they would reload faster the second time because the images would have already loaded, theoretically. Here we have a game called Through the Helios, which looks like another dungeon crawler, low effort game. Seems to have some surface gameplay also. RPG type experience. $4.99 English only. Claims to be rated by the ESRB. I think the ESRB needs to come out and say, no, we really didn't rate some of these games. Here we have a game called Lei Huang. Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. This looks like it's kind of a fast-paced bounce around game. Physics and destruction funny is what it's tagged as. $4.79, bunch of languages. Claiming full audio support for all of those languages. I'm gonna skip that. Here we have a game called Conspiracy, which I don't know if this is something like Her Story with a different interface and maybe a little less polish. Seems like there's some photos and there's some audio and you're trying to drag things around. I wonder if a game like this, yeah, it's 2 to 3 hours. You can't play it again. It doesn't randomize. $4.49 English full audio. Well, I'll put it on the fall list. A story like this definitely is going to come down to just how well it's received. I have 4 more tabs. We have a Defender of the Cupure Belt, which is a shoot 'em up game of low effort for $3.99 English only. They're comparing it to Titan Souls, which I completely disagree with that. I don't feel like Titan Souls was a shoot 'em up anyways. You had one arrow you could shoot, and then you had to recall the arrow. It's hardly a shoot 'em up game. Here we have a game called Glad Eye, which looks like it's an RPG top-down hack and slash game. If the visuals here were a little bit more polished, I'd be slightly more enthusiastic for a game like this. It's $9.99 English only. So do I want to put this on the fall list, or am I satisfied that I'm not interested in it? I think looking at all the screenshots, I'm fairly satisfied there's not enough here to interest me, so I'm going to skip that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Taratopia, which seems to be a whole bunch of weird-looking monsters, top-down fighting thing, beat 'em up cartoony game. There might be something to this. $11.99, bunch of languages. I'm gonna put this one on the fall list. At some point, I'm gonna have to determine to do a fall list cleanup. Also, maybe it would make sense to do a fall list cleanup. Honestly, I don't know. I think I might want to just put it off till like December. Finally, we have a game here that's just Asian characters, and it looks like it's a space shooting game. Visually, it doesn't look that terrible, though. It's not really that bad. $3.99 Chinese only. Decent price, too, for what it looks like. Now, it may literally be only like 5 seconds of gameplay, but of the screenshots I'm looking at, this is not offensively bad at a decent price. Of course, then you run into the problem of it just not being in English, so I can't cover it any further than that. Okay. And then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, where there are no new game bundles. They're pushing a design expression bundle of software, which Corel Painter 2020, and you enter for a chance of cash prizes and other cash and other prizes. So that's new for the Humble Bundle store. At a certain point, then you're kind of gambling. Then that brings me back to my Twitter feed. Apparently an hour ago, the Shift series service for Gearbox was having troubles, which we've extremely rarely run into that. Gematsu has the ReZero Starting Life in Another World, The Prophecy of the Throne opening movie, which is a new ReZero game. I'm sure that's coming out. And seemingly that's literally all that happened. Either that or Twitter's just being wonky again. I guess I could reload just to make sure, but yeah. According to Twitter, I literally had, over the course of 2 hours, only 2 new tweets. I guess that doesn't surprise me as much as I at first would think, because yeah, there's not likely to be a lot of tweets in the middle of the night. Well, this has been an awkward stream to say the least, as we've had major network problems. We've made very little success, particularly when it would be very beneficial to have made more success on Shadowverse. And yeah, well, not a lot of news coming out. I think we may run into that for a while now, due to just US politics happening. We may see a slowdown, that and the pandemic combined. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get any major bits of video game news for a week or two, at least until Monday. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.